everybody, Charlie Stevens here. Thank you so much for watching another guitar lesson. Today I'd like to teach you about the formula that goes into making a natural minor scale happen. So this one's a little less important to memorize in my opinion than the major scale formula is. That one is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So that one I've really use that information more so than I've learned this, but I think this is a helpful one to know as well, especially when we start learning about the melodic minor and the harmonic minor. All three versions of those minor scales will start out the same way, so the first tetrachord will be the same, so we'll talk about that as we go, but kind of understanding what this pattern is can be good for that, but really it's not something that I necessarily have memorized. I can think about it for a quick second and know what it is, but I sort of use other tricks to help me know what this scale is rather than just memorizing the pattern. For instance, if I know my major scale formula, which I listed earlier, really all we're doing is starting at a different point in that sequence and following the sequence from there when we do this. So you don't really have to memorize the pattern if you already know the other scale, because this one is just sort of part of that same pattern, just starting in a different place. This is a modal way of thinking. This is how we understand different modes. We can actually start on any note of our major scale and follow the pattern that we would get from there, and we'll get a different mode each time. So this is actually good to understand as a mode as well. What we're going to learn today is the A natural minor scale, which could also be thought of the A Aeolian mode. And since we often don't use the natural minor scale, but rather the melodic or the harmonic in actual practice, it almost makes sense to think about this in more of a modal way, I think. So anyway, that's kind of an intro to getting you starting to think about modes as well. But basically what we're going to do is play in A minor scale on one string. So we learned the C major formula. We also learned how to play the C major in open position, and then we also learned how to play an A natural minor in open position. So please go check out those videos if you haven't seen them already. But in those videos we discussed how they're really the same thing. They share the same notes but just starting on a different point. Okay? So we looked at A natural minor like this. And we learned that we had the notes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and A. Okay, and that's because in the key of C we had C, D, E, F, G, A, B, back to C. So now we just started on A, we kept those exact same notes. Okay, so instead of playing it in a position here, we're going to play this all on one string, and we're just going to figure out the pattern. Rather than me telling you the pattern, we'll kind of extrapolate it this way. And this is how I would most normally think about it if I ever had to know it. I would probably check this out this way instead of just calling it up for memory. Anyhow, so we'll just look what happens. So this is a great way of learning our A string too and getting practice with our musical alphabets. When we start on A and we do A minor, we're supposed to skip all of the enharmonic notes, the sharps and flat notes. We're supposed to skip all of those because we only want the natural ones, right? So we'll start on A. The next note in A minor is the very next letter in the alphabet because we can't use A sharp, which is the next note in our musical alphabet. So we skip that and we're at B. Okay, now after B we get C. So that was a half step. So far we had a whole step and then a half step. So that didn't happen in our major scale. We had to wait later on in the scale to get our half step. So this is why this is a much different sounding scale. The distance between the first three notes is a different interval. We call this one a minor third. And now if we looked at what happened in C, we went from C to E. That's 4 frets away. A to C, that's only 3 frets away. So that's a little bit of a different distance. And that's really what makes a minor scale, in my opinion, is that it creates a minor chord starting on the tonic, and that happens because of how there's a different spacing here. Okay? So I'm sort of jumping ahead a little bit. Hopefully that will make sense to you eventually, or if you're further along already as you're watching this, maybe it will help some things that you're working on click. But we're not super concerned about that for this video. So if that didn't make sense, whatever. We're going to move on. So we have a whole step from A to B, and then a half step from B to C. Okay, now C, we need to go to D, right? So C has a sharp, so that means we go a whole step to D. All right, so that's another whole step. So far we have whole, half, whole. Okay, that's our first tetrachord. Okay, so this is going to be the same pattern on harmonic minor and melodic minor as well. Okay, so this part is very important on what makes a minor scale a minor scale. It's this. Sounds like a Neil Young song, actually. Anyway, let's keep going. So we're at D here. A whole step up is E. Okay. Well, we didn't know we had a whole step up, huh? We knew we needed the note E next. How we were doing this, right? Because it's the next letter in the alphabet that's not a sharp or flat, and that happens to be a whole step up. So that's what we needed. Okay, after E, next letter in the alphabet is F. E does not have a sharp, so that means F is just right here on the very next fret. Okay, after F comes G. F does have a sharp, so we have to skip over F sharp, which would be there on the 9th fret. And instead we'll play the G on our 10th fret. Okay, whole step from F to G. Now, next letter, alphabet starts over and we're back at A, which is here on the 12th fret, so that's another whole step. Okay, so let's add up what we had. We had A, and then we had B, whole, to C was half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. Okay, again. Whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. Okay, so just like in the major scale, we have tetrachords, but they're different now. They're constructed differently. So instead of whole, whole, half, like we have in a major scale, we have whole, half, whole. Okay? So some of the minor modes would not have that exact pattern, but all of the minor scales, natural, melodic, and harmonic, all are going to start like that. So that's sort of an important one. Also, the Dorian mode also has that, but not Phrygian. Anyhow, then we separate the two tetrachords with a whole step, just like we did in major. Okay, and now we get one where the half steps actually starts it. Kind of cool. So that's kind of the feature of the second half of this. Okay, so again, I never really memorized that necessarily. It's pretty easy to figure out if you ever need to know that pattern. But I just thought it would be a cool way of explaining that and tying it into what we've learned before. Get a little practice learning the notes on our A string, which will be really helpful when we want to learn how to start moving around some chords and things. We can use our knowledge of the A string as a root to build a lot of chords off of, so that's a really important string to memorize. So this is a good exercise for learning where all the natural notes are on your A string. Okay, and now that we have that though, we can actually just memorize the frets that we used, and any string we start on, that pattern will work, right? So here we are on the open string, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, 5th fret, 7th, 8th, 10th, and 12th. No matter what string I start on, I'm always going to get a natural minor scale that will be named after the string I started on. So I'd like to start on E. Okay, and this is the real reason I wanted to teach you this lesson today, because in the next lesson we're going to talk about how to play E minor in open position, and I wanted to explain something else about that during that video, and I thought it would make more sense if we had talked about this first. So this is the real reason we're kind of diving into this today. So we're going to do the same thing on our E string. It's the same frets, 0, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 10, 12. Got that? So I can do that with one finger. I can also do that with finger groups. I can go open and then my index finger on the 2nd fret, second finger on the 3rd fret, pinky on the 5th fret. This one is very cool because I have this shape again. I have this whole step that connects here. So if I jump to position, I'm going to put my first finger on 7, and then I put my second finger on 8 and my pinky on 10, and I have this mirrored finger position. I used fingers 1, 2, and then 4, and then I move up here, and I get that exact same thing. And then I would shift up to get this high E up here. On the way back I do it opposite. I could do it like this with a stretch and then shift there, but I'd prefer to keep the mirrored fingering. So I'm going to shift right away with my pinky back to 10. Then I use that little fingering of 4, 2, 1 on frets 10, 8, and 7. Now I'm going to shift down to where my pinky's all the way on 5. 5 with the pinky, 3 here, and 2 with the index, and then open. That works on A just as well. Or D for that matter. Or G or B, or wherever you want to do it. So we did it in E today. And if we check out the notes, we have E. That's an F sharp right there. We learned about that recently on this channel. G, A. So maybe we should have done this on our low E. Everything we do on the low E is true as well. E, F sharp, G, A. And if I had done it this way, the reason I wanted to switch gears is because we learned in one of our first lessons about how to tune the guitar that's where the guitar repeats at the 5th fret is A, and we have our next string this way is an A. So hopefully the 5th fret being A is something that you're starting to get used to knowing here. This is a good fret to sort of memorize. Okay, A, then B, C, D, and E. So those are all the exact same notes that we had in G major, just a little bit out of order. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. If I just started on the E, I get the E natural minor scale, right? So that's a pretty cool way to play this as well. So we have our different fingering options you can try, and you can kind of say the notes and get used to learning your notes. If the E is a little bit overwhelming, then you can stick to the A. I do recommend doing E though, because it's one of the most important strings to learn because we have 2 of them. Every time I memorize which note is on a certain fret of this E string, that's also true for this E string. G, G, right? And like I was saying about the A string, how we can kind of root chords from there, we can do that on the E string as well. So those are probably the 2 most important strings to learn. So doing this exercise with both these scales would be a great way of going up and down the string, kind of saying out the note names and learning where they are. Okay, so that's just sort of an overview on what the minor scale pattern looks like and how you can play a natural minor scale on just one string. Please join me in the next lesson and we'll check out E minor in a little bit more depth. We'll learn an entire 2-octave or perhaps even 3-octave way to play that, but we'll mostly check out the open position 2-octave version. Okay, well thank you so much for joining me for that guitar lesson. I hope you have an awesome day. Please subscribe to the channel and I look forward to seeing you in another lesson real soon. Thanks again.